microphone. Hey, guess what? It's time to begin with Bollox Talks and Tangents.
Hi, honey, I'm home.
We're scattered all over the place. We're making last-minute changes. If you watched the pre-show, you saw me running around and Lenny writing feverishly and Blake trying to get us to sit down where we needed to be. But appreciate you guys. It's 6:34. That means it's time for Bollox Talks and Tangents, and we got a great show.
One of my favorite times of the week right now, 6:34.
Yeah, it is. It is a fun time. We laugh and learn, and we laugh and learn together.
Yes,
which is always great. Lenny, our wait, I want to make sure I say it right. City of Long Beach, State of New York, former politician, and now podcast extraordinaire, joining me today in Studio B.
It's a pleasure and a privilege to be able to do this.
In Studio B, the Bollox Studio.
Known as the parlor.
The parlor. So the
local parlance.
The parlor is over to Lenny's left. And anytime you guys want to come in and sit in, we have 2 seats in the parlor that are welcome if you want to come and sit in the live show. Blake's in the booth pushing all the buttons. Thank you, Blake Blevins.
Hi.
Appreciate you. My oldest, of course, and the smartest one out of the Blevins is in the studio today.
Yeah, but we'll say though about the parlor though, you have to have a good strong bladder though, because you can't leave.
You can't.
Right.
You can't. You have to be able to hold it for an hour and 5 minutes.
Yep.
So, all right. We are drinking today. We're drinking Basil Hayden Dark Rye. I don't know if this is even considered a bourbon, but it's a fine whiskey.
It's a whiskey.
It's a fine whiskey for sure. And I'm going to take my first sip.
Right,
and we killed that bottle. That's
yes, we did.
That's a dead soldier right there.
Yep. It's not a bourbon because bourbon needs a predominance of corn. Not.
Yep. Dead soldier.
Not rye.
Yeah. Blake, did you want some?
It's good.
Sorry, we're out.
I'm good, thank you though.
Okay.
I did learn to like rye very much.
Yeah. No, and it's got a little more of a bite to it, but it's a very, very smooth rye as far as ryes go. All right, and that gets us right into our sponsors. Our sponsors, St. Augustine Distillery, and these guys just won a very prestigious award. So congratulations to the entire staff over at St. Augustine Distillery.
It's like the best distillery in the country.
The number 1 distillery in the country is the way I understood it. And well-deserved. These guys worked so hard over there. The owners, Mike and Phil. I talked to Phil right before the Mike Davis show. Just a wonderful man, great community guy. Congratulations, worked so hard to get this going. And now he's reaping those rewards, rightfully so. And Citygate Spirits, I'm telling you right now, the unique flavors of Citygate Spirits is different than any other distillery tour you're going to take.
Yep.
And I have not sent anyone there that went, that was horrible. No, they've all loved it. And I'm telling you right now, if you're a whiskey person, you need to get down to Citygates and take their tasting tour.
Yep, they give you a lot of different flavors to taste. It's great. The prices are fair on their bottles, which is nice. And if you're looking to break up an afternoon on St. George Street, it's a great place to take a little break.
Oh, it really is. It really is. And also a great place if you do that and you want to soak up some of that alcohol or get more alcohol, stop in at Meehan's Irish Pub. Amazing food, great spirits, wonderful people. 3 bars in one, very unique experience that you're not going to find anyplace else in St. Augustine.
I think the owner and operator is just such a lovely, lovely man that everything is, it's truly a top-down organization because Reggie is just salt of the earth, and it shows with the people that work with him and work for him and how he handles his customers and his place and the care he puts into that building. That's an old building.
Yeah. No, it's amazing. We love it. It's family friendly. You can do it on a date night. You can do it. It fits everybody.
Yep.
And it's
inside, outside.
Really just amazing. All right. Also somebody who fits everybody, Abare, Kresge and Associates, the best CPAs in town. You have any tax issues, starting a new business, starting an LLC, they'll help you through that entire process. Abare, Kresge and Associates, give them a call. All right. St. Augustine Pirate Museum. They also do the Taberna Bar. They do Bull and Crown. They do St. Augustine Seafood and the Colonial Oak. This group of talented professionals really make St. Augustine, downtown St. Augustine, what it is. So thank you, and we're so proud that you're our sponsor.
And, you know, Ray, who plays with us on our trivia team, had family in town. So I was able to gift him a bunch of VIP passes to the Pirate Treasure Museum.
Oh, yeah.
They loved it.
Wonderful.
They were thrilled with it. It was great.
Wonderful.
Great for out-of-towners, great for in-towners, but they really enjoyed themselves.
All right, and this place might be our stop tomorrow for lunch. Kaiser's Deli and Market. Try the Bollox, and when you order the Bollox, get it with half turkey and half pastrami, and it dipped. Is that what it is? Or-
Pressed.
pressed, but I mean, with the what's the
The au jus?
The juice you
The au jus?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you do that or no?
No, not on that. No, because it's just too much with the pastrami. That would take away from the good pastrami grease.
Okay. No, I think they load it with some little extra grease. I love the
Okay.
pastrami grease.
Well, that's the pastrami.
Yeah,
it's once the
pastrami,
pastrami
okay.
heats up,
Yeah,
the
that's
fat
why I
the
gotta
fat
go to
comes
the
out of it, and fat is flavor.
Oh, fat is
Especially
flavor.
when you're dealing with turkey, which is kind of bland, vanilla, and neutral. I mean, I like turkey. Don't get me wrong; a turkey sandwich is good. But when I have a turkey sandwich, I either have to put a hot pepper, a sweet pepper, or some kind of Russian dressing. Every now and again, I'll go mayo heavy just for nostalgia.
All right, and last but not least is Coquina Coast Realty. Give me a call if you have any real estate needs. I have available office space at the Cigar Building and at the Treasury. I have an apartment available downtown. My number is 904-669-7901. 904-669-7901. All right.
Call up.
We paid the bills. It's time to get started. Word origins. What you got? Your first word origin.
My first word
We
origin.
only have one. Each one of us has one.
Well, mine is, and I'm sorry we can't say this.
Mm-hmm.
Omerta.
Omerta?
Omerta. Omerta is.
The part of word origin is knowing what the hell the word means in the first place. Lenny.
Ooh, well,
Oh, Dennis
if you were made man, you would know this. We're doing mobsters. We're doing the mob and mobsters today. And in the Italian mob, there was a series of rules. And one of them, and the last and the most important one for a long time, was the concept of omerta.
Omerta.
Which is, Omerta.
Wait, I want to ask a question because Blake's more intelligent than I. Blake, do you have any idea what the word omerta is? I've never even heard it, and I watch a lot of mob shows.
So I think I heard before. Like is it basically like I think I heard it in terms of like President Emerita or something like that. So basically it's basically like an honorary title for someone.
No, that would be Don. That would be the capo de tutti de capo.
All right,
The big boss.
All right, Lenny, so you've already
Explain.
the two of us.
Okay.
So go ahead and crush the rest of the people out there. Souls.
Omerta is the concept of once you become a made man, once you join this thing of ours, the Cosa Nostra, which, by the way, the mafia, which none of which exists, should you know.
It doesn't.
It's very Fight Club-like.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't exist. But the concept of omerta is silence. It's a code of
You've already
silence.
broken omerta.
I haven't because I haven't ratted anybody out. But yes, and I'm also not a made. I'm also not a made man.
Okay.
I didn't bleed onto a religious icon with a flame and over a gun to become part of this brotherhood.
Yeah.
So, but once you're in, you can never rat anybody out. You can't turn on a brother, which is another made man. You can't ever talk to the cops or the authorities. It is a code of absolute silence.
And that goes across all families.
All the families and the entire Italian mafia, the Italian mobs, exactly. Which was great right up until the
So
point.
what was the origin of omerta?
Well, it could come from the Neapolitan root of the word umerta, which is Umerta, which means humility. So you have to have some humility about this, or a Spanish word which is hombredad, which is fertility. So it's a combination of fertility and humility, and it's basically you just keep your mouth shut. I mean, there are guys that did 25-year prison terms that they could have gotten out with rolling over on somebody, and they didn't. They got in, they got out, and when they came out, they were celebrated. They were rewarded for their silence.
And their families were always taken care of.
Yes. But then, there were cracks in the dike, so to speak. And by 1963, and we'll talk about him a little bit more later, depending on how the evening goes, a gentleman by the name of Joe Valachi got pissed off, basically testified before Congress, and he said, I want revenge. And he ratted everybody out. And he was the first guy to start spilling the beans. He said, there's omerta, and I'm blowing it here. And, He ended up dying in prison. They didn't kill him, but he died in prison.
Wow.
But like John Gotti died in prison, but he was in prison for years and years and years. Never spilled the beans. His underboss, Sammy Gravano, went to prison. He said, "Yeah, I'm done with this," and started talking.
Yeah.
So when they sing, they sing. As a matter of fact,
Well, you had a restaurant, several restaurants in New York.
Yeah.
So some of the families might have
oh, absolutely,
rubbed some shoulders with in this.
yeah.
But okay, and we're going to get into that. And so Omerta, when did the term first start? You think it was in the early part of the?
It came over the original five families. The original mobsters that came over in the late teens, early 20s, all came from Sicily. And you were not going to be a mobster if you weren't Sicilian by birth. So it was all Italian. Some people called it the Black Hand. Some people called it La Cosa Nostra, this thing of ours. Mafia is sort of a made-up term, though it carries on in Italy today. Omerta was this concept of when you joined this organization, and it was a brotherhood. It was, a variation of a fraternal organization to a degree. And that was it. You kept your silence, or you got whacked. So, and that was it. So it came about, I would say, in the 20s, as far as the concept of Omerta. When the five families developed, when the mafia developed, and they became the five families, that's when they set up these series of rules. And one of them was, we don't do narcotics. Well, that worked well until they started doing narcotics because they could make too much money doing it. And that became a schism between the five families, too.
Yeah.
Between the Bonanno family and the others, because they started trending in narcotics. And some of the old world mafioso thought it was just too much heat. It was too much exposure in that. So they didn't want to deal in drugs. It's not like they weren't making money doing everything else. Loan sharking, prostitution, pornography, hits. Extortion.
We're still in word origins.
Okay.
You
got one?
You totally went down on a different tangent altogether. I let Lenny get away from me because I was distracted over here.
Well, Omerta it's a very involved concept. Either you abide by it and you shut up, or you don't, and you either hide out in jail or you get dead.
Yeah. So, all right, and you talked about hiding out. My word is a word origin. It is a barricade.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
And barricade comes from Middle French.
Yep.
And it came from
I just saw this.
French religious wars between the French Roman Catholics and the Calvinist Huguenots. And it literally means contains barrels or made of barrels.
Right. You fill up barrels with rocks and crap.
You fill up barrels with sand. And during this time, when we're talking about 1562 to 1598, they would stack barrels filled with rocks and use those as barricades.
Yep.
And that's where the term barricades is made with barrels. Is basically what it is. So I never associated a barrel with a barricade.
Right.
Until I read that.
Yeah, I just saw that recently too. As a matter of fact, yeah, that's great, and it's very The show is very educational.
Yeah.
It really is. We learn things.
Yeah. And sometimes we laugh.
Yeah. Well,
sometimes we got to be careful with the mobsters.
Well, yeah, that's true.
We're
that's
not making
true.
fun. All right.
No. As they say, some of my best friends.
We're doing this out of respect.
Yep. Absolutely.
But some of them never had the makings of a varsity athlete, though. That was a Sopranos reference. You got Junior said to Tony.
I got to tell you, I watched the first episode of The Sopranos, and then I had to go away from it for a while because it was just so far-fetched. I'm not from reality, but from the fact that nobody in Newark stood up to these guys and said, "You're a bunch of middle-aged men walking around with baseball bats whacking people.
Yeah.
What the hell?" Nobody stood up to him. It's like, Paulie Walnuts. He may be menacing, but you look at the guy. He's not a varsity athlete.
Yeah.
But I don't understand.
The thing is,
it's the menace.
Here's the thing, and I've been in a couple of fights in my life, and I've won fights because I understand being in a fight, you got to want to win the fight.
Yeah.
99.9% of the people in the world don't want to punch someone else in the face. They don't want to punch someone at all.
Right.
They have no violence. Human beings are not made for violence, even though what you see on the news and everything else.
We're too physically fragile.
Yes, we are not made.
We're soft.
Well, we're not mentally made for it.
Right.
You know, and it's the person that's willing to be in the fight that usually wins the fight. And when it comes to mobsters and gangsters and what I'm reading in history, it's not always the strongest guy.
No.
It's the guy willing to be the Joe Pesci of the world in Goodfellas.
Right.
He was the scariest guy in the movie, and he was 5'4".
Yeah.
You know?
Spider, you mumble and fuck.
Yeah. Oh, now I'm funny to you. I mean, I'm just joking here. So it's that's the mobster fear of they know that person's not going to stop. That's the fear that comes along with it. It has nothing to do with what they look like in a middle-aged guy. I mean, some of the people that scare me the most in life were middle-aged guys that had zero fear in life.
Right.
So,
and you look because you look at some of the guys who became the pinnacle. Now, John Gotti was a presence. I mean, the guy was relatively trim. He was good looking. He had that mane of hair.
Yeah.
You know, the Dapper Don, the Teflon Don, whatever you want to call him. So he cut a. But then and in the 30s and the 40s, even still, the guys were. As Blake said, they were not varsity athletes. But then you see a couple of guys that were, running these families after, Profaci went to jail. A couple of these guys went to jail. And it's like, maybe they're 6 foot tall, but they're also 275 pounds and it's not muscle, So these were.
It's the guys that's willing to be in the fight.
Right. And a lot of these guys, when they started, they did their own dirty work. They got their hands dirty.
All right. I have a list of, you can see, I think I have 9 written down over here. I don't think we can do this show without talking about Capone.
Okay.
I think we have to talk about Capone and his rise and where he was at. He was nicknamed Scarface. No one called him that to his face.
Right.
He was called Big Al, allowable. His nickname Snorky is probably what his closest friends called him.
Snorky. Okay.
So his closest friends called him that. But he was a 5 Points gang member as a teenager. Kind of rose through the ranks because he was willing to be in the fight. And
5 Points in New York.
Yeah, 5 Points gang member in New York. And then he triculated over to Chicago.
Right.
And when Prohibition came along is when he got his real juices. Right. So when I say Capone, what comes to mind to you?
Basically Chicago, the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, the bootlegging, the absolute no concern for Tommy gunning people down in the street, mob wars and blood and violence in the streets. It was interesting because when the commission was created by Lucky Luciano, to bring the 5 major families together to create this organization, and they created a commission. It was the 5 New York major mob families, and Chicago and Buffalo. So they were brought in. They were adjacent. They were like commission adjacent. So it was kind of interesting that those guys were there, and I think that it was Chicago was Capone at the time because a lot of this stuff happened in the it started in the 20s. Two guys got together and said, instead of us fighting against each other, why don't we work together and we can control basically the world, which for quite some time they did in New York and it's funny too because if you realize it, there was a series of little pulp novels that I read called The Executioner. No. It wasn't. It'll come to me. But it was about this guy who was, basically going to war against the mafia families because the mob killed his wife and his kid. So he went and it's like, there's the Buffalo mob, the Pittsburgh mob, the Kansas City mob. I mean, there's, you go to the mob museum in Las Vegas and you don't realize how many major cities in America have mob families. It's mind-boggling how much mob mentality there is and how much the mob controls unions and linen and carding.
If they actually existed.
Well, right. If there was such a thing, right.
If they actually existed.
Right. Yes,
All
Virginia, there's no mafia.
With Capone, I think the stat that I saw, and I've seen it in a couple of different places, when he died, and he died of a heart attack. He didn't die of
syphilis.
Right. He did have some insanity from the syphilis that made him not the person that he actually got out because of some of the insanity stuff, because he was convicted of tax evasion.
Tax evasion, right? In
when
prison,
he died-
in prison in Florida.
When he died, they said his family controlled about $3 billion at that time.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking in 47. $3 billion in 1947. That is ridiculous. So I mean,
And it wasn't legal money.
no, it was completely laundered, and I mean, it was mostly started with alcohol, but it was still they were always running gambling and numbers.
Yep.
So
Well, it was, you know, you look at something like New Skin or Amway or Avon or Mary Kay. You want to talk about a successful multi-level marketing program. Look at the mob. You know,
they started.
everybody gets a taste.
All right, I have Albert, Anastasia, and Lucky Luciano next.
Okay.
Which one? You already mentioned Lucky.
Okay.
Which one do you want to go to, or do you have
Well,
anything on Anastasia at all?
Do I have anything on Anastasia? Absolutely, man. He was one of the prominents in, and it's ironic. Murder Incorporated. Murder Incorporated was a sub business of the five families in the commission, and these guys would you put a contract on somebody, and Murder Incorporated would take the contract, and they would go kill somebody, and. It's between 1929 and 1941, they murdered somewhere between 400 and 1,000 people. And at the end of the day, Albert Anastasio got whacked in the barber chair.
Yeah.
He was killed in, where was it? It was in 1957 by Joey Gallo, who ended up getting whacked at Umberto's Clam House years later. I mean, this is the gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah.
So Albert Anastasio was just a killer.
Yeah, it was the Gambino's family and the
Genovese, right.
Genovese family
Right.
that took out Anastasia.
Okay, so you had the five families that started were the Marzano family, the Mangano family, the Profacci, Luciano, and Gagliano. And they became the Bonanno, Colombo, Gambino, Genovese, and Lucchese families as time changed and as the bosses changed. So those were the five families. Those were the members of the commission with the rotating. It's like the Security Council with the rotating seat of Buffalo and Chicago. But yeah, Albert Anastasia, he was a cold-blooded killer. And again, he looked like
his own dirty work.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
He did his own dirty
Yep.
work.
Yep.
All right, and Lucky did not do his own dirty work.
No, but Lucky Luciano put the commission together.
He is the one, and he's considered the person that legitimized the mafia.
Right, by making the commission. Exactly, the five families.
By creating the families.
Yep.
What was his first name?
Lucky.
Charles.
Well, to you.
Yeah.
Those of us who knew him well.
Charles.
Right.
Yeah, you knew Lucky in '62.
I got lucky, right, exactly. Not in 62. It was a little later.
But he ended up getting deported.
Right.
He was arrested here for sex trafficking. Kind of got out. What was the?
They sent him back to Sicily.
Omerta.
Yeah.
Yeah. He greased some palms and worked his way to where they released him to Italy.
It's Sicily.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not Italy, Sicily. There's a difference.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing is,
Sicily's not in Italy?
well, not if he has the Sicilians.
Okay. Where's Naples?
East coast of the peninsula.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was that in Italy?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because that's where he died,
Yeah.
not Sicily.
Yeah. Oh. I'm surprised he didn't get to Sicily.
Yeah.
But I'll put it to you this way: this is how powerful he was. When the commission and the higher ups had a meeting to get together to determine that they were going to put a hit on Bugsy Siegel, the man who basically created Las Vegas. Luciano couldn't come back to the country because he'd been deported.
Yes.
So they had the meeting in Havana so that Luciano could go to this commission meeting in Havana and participate in the decision to
Because Bugsy
hit.
was a made man,
Correct.
so it had to be an assigned hit.
Yep.
From a Don.
And the sad part about that is Bugsy's best friend and his running buddy was Meyer Lansky.
Okay.
That's the other interesting thing. Murder Incorporated was started by a couple of Jewish guys. Yeah. But Meyer Lansky, who was Bugsy Siegel's mentor, among other things, eventually capitulated and gave his okay to hit Bugsy Siegel, and they killed him in Hollywood, or in Beverly Hills, actually.
Yeah. All right. Right after Luciano came into power was Frank Costello.
Costello, yep.
Costello.
Yep.
Costello, like Abbott and Costello. he kind of rose through that family and came into power when Luciano went to prison.
Right.
All right. And the name of that family was the Genovese. Genovese. He was nicknamed the Prime Minister. Okay, I never heard that before. And he bought directly from East Asia during the Vietnam War, and introduced heroin into this lifestyle of where it was at.
Was it Costello who brought in the heroin? I thought it was the Bonanno family. I thought it was Joe Bonanno.
Yeah.
Who was bringing in the heroin, because a lot of the families were, again, in the original commission rules, no narcotics. Even though you can make a lot of money doing it, it wasn't like they were poor.
Yeah.
So a couple of families did,
says,
and then
it says here he used the East Asian connection during the Vietnam War to traffic heroin, effectively cutting off the activities of the Italian mob, who usually controlled trade. So he went directly to it and took care of it that way. And it also says he survived the assassination attempt that killed Albert Anastasia. So, and escaped many legal cases, and he eventually died of a heart attack at 82.
He retired. He's Frank Costello. There was a hit on Frank Costello. Guy who was executing the contract was sort of friendly with him and knew Costello. And again, this is where Omerta comes in. So, the guy goes into the lobby of his hotel. The doorman sees the guy doing the thing. Costello sees the guy, turns around. The guy is a little shaky. The bullet ricochets off of his hat band, and there's a picture of his hat with the bullet strike on it. Frank Costello is now walking around for 3 or 4 days or a week or so with a big bandage around his head. And he basically says, I didn't see the guy. He does Omerta. I didn't see the guy. I don't know who it was. It could have been anybody, but I never saw him. The doorman's going, it was him. The doorman wasn't Italian or in the mob. So the doorman was a witness to this. And then Frank Costello said, you know what? I'm going to take an early retirement. And retired, and lived to
82 years old.
Yep. Which for a lot of these guys was impressive.
But this is evidently it was him that they believe Mario Puzo's book, The Godfather, was named after, or was based after him.
Okay.
So I thought it would have been one of the more known names, like or one of those others.
Well, at the time, Frank Costello was he was the big boss.
Yeah, and he left behind $52 million when he died at the age of 82.
Yep.
All right. What are some of the ones you got over there? You got some different ones written down than I do over here.
I've got these are the guys these are the rats. Joe Velacci, Sammy the Bull Gravano, who was a hitman for John Gotti.
Okay.
Gravano was the underboss for John Gotti when John Gotti was the Don. And, he went to prison, and then he spilled the beans starting in 1991. But the fascinating one was a guy by the name of Joe Pistone.
Okay.
Joe Pistone was an undercover FBI agent who was in the Bonanno family for 6 years undercover as a gentleman by the name of Donnie Brasco.
Donnie Brasco.
Yep.
Sometimes forget about it means forget about it.
Yep. So, he was.
Have you ever seen Donnie Brasco?
I have not.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that was I have not.
It was
I have not.
Right.
Yeah, that microphone works better when you're talking to it.
I was talking to it, Dad.
Come on, producer. So, but Donnie Brasco is a great movie, and I guess it's the story of his life. I didn't realize that's the
6
actual
years.
name.
Yeah, Joe Pistone. And the thing is when he came out and testified starting in 1982, the guys in the Bonanno family that had him as a family member for 6 years, they started getting whacked left and right. How can you have this rat in our family? And they were just bang, bang, bang. And the boss and 2 or 3 of the other guys were just whacked straight out. But the feds made it very clear to the commission and to the mobsters, do not put a contract out on Joe Pistone. Do not do that. Don't go after him, because then you'll have not that the entire weight of the FBI was, but they said, leave him be. You guys fucked up. He got in there. He was there for 6 years. You didn't know it. He's coming out. You lose, and there was a rift. So the commission became 4 families plus the Bonanno family because there was a schism. Then they wouldn't trust anybody.
I think Al Pacino's character in that movie is one of my favorite mob characters of all the mob movies. And we talked about it over there. You said Goodfellas was your favorite on the Mike Davis show earlier, and I said The Godfather to me kind of set the tone in my love for the mobster movies. So Donnie Brasco.
Yeah, 6 years. 6 years undercover, man. How do you not have acid indigestion from doing that, man?
Such a ballsy
Oh
move.
man. And again, an unassuming looking guy.
Yeah. All right. And we talked a lot about John Gotti. I have a John Gotti connection.
Okay.
If it actually exists.
The Gambino crime family?
No, the
It was there. They were there. Yeah.
No, if they do.
Right.
We don't know if they do or not.
Well, right.
You're making an assumption.
We're looking for plausible deniability
You're
here.
making an assumption that he actually existed. But John Gotti, he had a lot of stuff in Florida.
Okay.
My roommate, his father, owns several marinas and lost a lot of marinas when he went to jail.
Ah.
And he did not speak. He did not talk. But my roommate always paid me, because my name was on the lease, always paid me in cash out of a duffel bag.
Out of a duffel bag. Okay.
The duffel bag was under his bed, and he always paid me in cash out of a duffel bag. And his family, all their properties got taken, all their luxury cars, all of that stuff got taken when he went to jail. I'm running numbers to pay the bills. I'm on a government salary at the time, and we're beyond the.
I'm sorry, you're running numbers?
I'm running numbers like I'm gambling and taking bets. And doing that for extra money at this time in my career. And my roommate knows this, and I'm running it out of our apartment. And it sucked because you know, where I was at, I would have to take VCRs from my friends that didn't pay.
Okay. Look at you, strong-armed man.
But you had to do it. You know that's.
Hey, you forgive somebody once, you never collect again.
You can't do that. But I mean, I was doing it to supplement my income, and I was doing this, and this is why I can't run for office, because of stories like this that I tell everyone about. And I'm coming home, and I'm living in Coquina Lakes apartment complex off of Pope Road. Okay, you know where that is.
Yeah.
So I think it's still called Coquina Lakes. I think it's now condominiums, but I lived one of those first. And I come in, and my 2 roommates are sitting on the couch, and I knew his dad was in jail and the story behind it. I come in and I go, "Hey, you guys notice the guys that are sitting out front? They've been there for 2 days, sitting in the car." And without even looking up, eating his Domino's pizza, my roommate goes, "Yeah, my dad got out." And that's all he said. I was like, and I called him by his nickname, and I was like, "You got to be kidding me! You're telling me?" He's like, "Yeah, they're probably tapping the phones. They don't care about you." I was like, "Oh, come on, man!"
Yeah. You're just a lowly numbers runner.
Yeah. They don't care about you.
Jesus.
So and that literally, I was just like, "You got to be kidding me! Will you let me get away with?"
Yeah, but
doing that out of the house.
Gotti was the dapper Don because he was so well dressed and put together. Somebody said, "You're wearing $1,000 suits." He said, "No, these are $1,800 suits. It wasn't $1,000 suit. It was an $1,800 suit." And they call him the Teflon Don because he got off on. They'd arrest him and he'd get off. They'd arrest him, he'd get off. Well, except for the last time when he didn't get off and he ended up dying in prison. Okay. But he's still running the family from prison. So it's again omerta, and that's it's like the scene in Goodfellas where they're in there and the 6 of them are in their cell and they've got a stove and they're slicing the garlic and they're cooking dinner and it's like it was like the Catskills. It was like Villa Roma.
Well, and the reason I brought him up is because the next one was the Gambino.
Carlo
Gotti
grandpa
ended up being in charge of the Gambino family.
Correct.
But the Carlo, his original family was
Genovese.
And Carlo was an interesting character in his own. He changed it to the Gambino family. I got to get back to him there. He was called Don Carlo.
Right. It was actually the Mangano family became the Gambino family. The Luciano family became the Genovese family, I think.
Oh, is that what it was?
Yeah.
Okay, that was a progression.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, they all switch back and forth depending on who was the boss at the time.
So another guy who dies at the age of 74
Yeah.
of a heart attack.
Yeah.
Everyone thinks that all these mob bosses got shot, and some of them did.
Yeah.
Some of them did.
A couple of them retired to Arizona.
But a lot of them just drifted off
And
and lived in society.
oh yeah. And lived well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, they definitely lived well.
Because I had an old business partner of mine. His daughter dated Carlo Gambino's great-grandson for quite some time. And apparently, Carlo had one hell of a freaking wine cellar.
Oh, I can't even imagine.
Guy had
what
some
that was like.
phenomenal bottles of wine and stuff.
I can't even imagine what that
Well,
looked like.
where I lived in Long Beach, that scene in The Godfather where they go to the mattresses and they're in that little walled house.
Mm-hmm.
That was in Lido. 5 minutes from where I grew up. The Gambinos had a house also in Lido in a different place around the corner, and a buddy of mine was very good friends with Carlo's grandson. So it was really, and they handled the garment business and trucking and things of that nature too. So there was also not division of labor, but division of what industries you controlled. Mm-hmm. Whether it was carting being garbage, whether it was trucking, whether it was the unions and the docks. It was fascinating. There was a serious business organization.
Yeah, no, and it's amazing the different levels of the mob, and people are still. I mean, they still make mob movies today.
There's still mobs today.
And
They're different,
Sopranos, you said, was some of the most ridiculous things, but I really enjoyed the show.
I did when I started watching. I finally got into it, but it took me a while because it's like, and again, it condones not only violence, but people just going to beat up people because they can. Mm-hmm. A lack of civility, no social contract. It's I'm tougher than you are. I don't know. Blake is.
He's telling we should do the sponsors. I think is what he's saying.
Okay. All right.
That's the Blake signal.
Today's
to talk about the
well, I guess we can't talk about pizzerias because because the whole Pizzagate thing where all the heroin was coming in and being distributed through the pizzerias, and that was the Bonanno family again.
The anchovies.
Yeah.
So no one orders anchovies.
No.
Yeah.
But they sold a lot of them.
They sold a lot of anchovies.
Okay.
All right. So let's talk about Coquina Coast Realty.
Okay.
Give me a call 904-669-7901. Kaiser's Deli and Market, get over there. They have a great little market, a wonderful deli, and amazing best sandwiches in town.
Try the dips.
Yeah.
Making a lot of homemade dips that are fabulous.
Excellent. Which would you suggest?
I would suggest the
If I'm
onion.
there tomorrow, what should I buy?
The onion dip. I don't know that I would put the onion dip on the Bollox with the pastrami, but if you just did it with the turkey and the ham, the onion dip would be perfect on it.
Okay.
So if you back down,
I get some boar's head and take it home and then use
get the onion dip, absolutely.
Get the onion dip for that. Okay.
And grab a bag of chips too, because Jules, tweaked the recipe a little bit, and it was great to start, and it's even greater now.
Excellent.
So yeah.
All right. St. Augustine Pirate Museum, they have over 800 original artifacts. They have one of the 3 Jolly Rogers.
It's so enjoyable.
It's an amazing place. You'll love it. St. Augustine Pirate Museum. Abare, Kresge and Associates, they're just the best in town. Simply the best. The CPAs that just know how to do things right and keep you out of trouble and save you money. And also knowing how to do things right. This restaurant, to me, and bar, whatever you want to call it, just a family location. Also, Meehan's Irish Pub. You talk about the Irish cream. Blake raves about their mac and cheese. I love their curry. There's something for everyone. They have an oyster bar upstairs. Give Reggie a call. Get over there to Meehan's Irish Pub. Last but not least, award-winning #1 distillery in the country, St. Augustine Distillery. If you haven't been there, if you haven't tried their products, you need to try their products. You will fall in love with it. And also their sister company, Citygate Spirits, located right there on the bayfront. 2 amazing companies in one. And thank you guys. Appreciate you allowing us to do Bollox.
Absolutely.
On a regular basis.
Absolutely. Go to the distillery. It's just it's worth it, you know. And it's funny because the distillery and the Pirate Treasure Museum, you can both exit through the gift shop.
Yeah.
So there are things to take home with you.
Wow, I wonder who thought of that. That was a great idea.
So,
all right, I'm going to go a little off script.
Okay.
And I'm going to hit. A lot of these people are very scary people, but on
The people that you're bringing up.
the one I'm going to bring up.
Okay, but I'm going to stop you there for 1 second,
Okay.
and then I'll let you go. One of the other components of the commission and the five families and the Cosa Nostra was the fact that civilians were off limits.
Yes.
You wanted to kill a made man. You wanted to kill somebody from another family if they had
get
earned it or deserved it. That's fine. That's one thing. But you first of all, you don't go after anybody's families.
Yeah.
You know that was it. Wives and children were
Always off limits.
Correct. And also, you didn't go after civilians.
Yeah.
The people that you're about to bring up have no such compunction
They didn't care.
whatsoever. There's the concept of collateral damage does not matter to the people that you're about to discuss.
Yeah. No, and I can tell you, on this list, the scariest of what I consider a mobster is a woman. And
Yeah.
I think she never, as far as we know, killed someone herself. But she had over 10,000 people killed. All right? And she's the Black Widow. All right? At her peak in the 70s and 80s, Griselda Blanco became the first ever billionaire criminal. We're talking a woman, billionaire criminal. All these guys on this list, you know, you don't see women in the gangster mix.
No.
But this woman reached a height that none of these other guys reached. All right? Earning $80 million a month from smuggling cocaine from Colombia to the U.S. She was a drug lord of the Medellin.
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 The Medellin cartel. Medellin.
And she was considered the Black Widow, the cocaine godmother, and the queen of narco trafficking. So she never carried out any of her own killings.
I'm trying to remember because I watched the beginning of Griselda. She didn't kill a couple people in the beginning of that?
She ordered the deaths of some 2,000 people. And she was shot dead at the age of 69 outside a butcher's by a man on a motorbike in Colombia. So somebody came by.
She went back to Colombia from Miami.
Yeah.
Because she was in Miami for ages.
Yeah, and she had to go back to Colombia because too much heat on her in Miami.
Mm.
I guess Colombia, there was more heat.
And boy, you know, if you watch Modern Family and you know the va-va-va-voom that is Sofia Vergara,
Yeah.
well, you should see her portrayal of Griselda Blanca.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. She's the one who, because there's a
plays
show
her.
called Griselda.
Oh, I haven't seen it.
Oh, yeah. I think it's on Netflix. Oh, yeah. It's a series. And she plays Griselda. And man, what a transformation from Gloria
A Modern Family.
Pritchard. Yeah.
So no, and I can tell you, I lost the comments here, but it's incredible the evil
Oh, yeah.
of this woman to get her means. And then this is the next one, and I did watch this drama series of this gentleman, Pablo Escobar.
Right.
And Pablo was also at a different level. Pablo, I don't know if did you see Narcos?
No.
Okay. So
It's, I'm torn because some of it's good and a lot of it's very educational or informational, but it also glorifies people that shouldn't be glorified. And this is where I get conflicted. Like The Sopranos. It was great television, but you're supporting people that were just horrible human beings.
all right, and Griselda took off from where Pablo started.
Yeah.
Pablo started this cartel, and Pablo is said to have murdered some 4,000 people.
Yeah.
4,000.
Yeah, it's a lot of people.
That is.
There's 16,000 people in the city of St. Augustine.
There's less than that.
Yeah.
There's like 14,000. So I was going to say it's like 30%, 35, almost 30% of the city of St. Augustine.
Yeah.
Is what he he murdered. I mean, that is the pure evil that comes in.
And they
It's
were not, and they were not all, mafioso or cartel members.
No.
I mean, a lot of them were, but still.
Right. They're saying that at his peak, he supplied the U.S. with 70 to 80 tons of cocaine per day.
Yeah.
Per day.
Yeah. That's a lot of snorting.
Gosh.
It's a lot of snorting.
So, and basically, he was imprisoned in 92. He escaped a nationwide manhunt, eventually leading to him being shot and killed the day after his 44th birthday. So he died a very violent death, that he created a lot of very violent deaths in his career.
Yeah.
But I couldn't bring up mobsters and not bring up these two.
Well, it's a whole different philosophy in all candor, because when and by the way, and there's still mobs and there's still families and there's they're still out there. There's no doubt about it. And there's I was looking up to see who's running this family and who's running that family, and they're not to say that they're incidental, because they're still very, very powerful people in their communities, and they're still and a lot of it a lot of the mobsters do good. They do charitable work. They take care of the constituency. They're like politicians.
Yeah.
They take care of the constituencies, and that's how they stay in power until they don't, and then they're out of power. Just as opposed to not getting reelected, you're getting hit. So there's a distinction there in a lot of ways as well. But somebody like who is it? It's like Joey Colombo. Mm-hmm. Joe Colombo took umbrage to the fact that the Italian Americans were being besmirched as only mobsters and mafiosos. So he created the Italian American Civil Rights League, which at one point in time had like 100,000 members, and he would have these huge rallies, and it was, we're Italians, we're not mobsters. Well, he was a mobster, don't you? But and so he's there, and he's at a rally, the second annual rally in Columbus Circle in Manhattan, and he's there, and some guy, under the guise of being a photographer and a videographer, walks up to him and shoots him. Mm-hmm. Kills him. Well, he doesn't kill him, actually. He shoots him right there in the middle of 10,000 people. As the cops grab this guy, one of Joey Colombo's bodyguards or assist, crawls between the legs of a cop and shoots this guy, the killer, shoots him dead and gets away. Mm-hmm. Mind-boggling. Colombo's not dead. He's in a coma for 7 years before he dies.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
That's crazy. Yeah. All right. So, and I want to talk a little bit about how you feel the mob came to be. I mean, we talk about what I'm reading as it comes out of the ghettos of New York and some of those things. At that time. Ellis Island, yeah. And when you get here, that American dream of when they come across the ocean wasn't truly believed, and they thought it was going to happen quicker than that, and some people took some shortcuts. What do you think? You think from the mob sprung out of immigration?
Sure. The American mafia, yeah, 100%. It was all Sicilian.
Do you think that controlled immigration to take it to modern times? Do you think controlled immigration, because I deal with a lot of very strong working the people that I deal with coming from other countries in the construction industry. They're sending 50 to 70% of their money back. Sure. They're living 8 people in a house. Yeah. But they're trying to get their family from Honduras or from Ecuador or wherever their families are from in Mexico. They're hardworking, quality human beings that I see, that I deal with. But I know there's bad also.
MS-13.
And I think it's the same going back 130 years ago when Ellis Island was at its very peak. The ghettos were very, very strong. Do you think poverty creates the mobsters, or do you think the evil is the evil?
I think the evil is the evil, because a lot of these people prey on their own community. Like MS-13 on Long Island, it came up. It's a Salvadorian gang. I believe it's from El Salvador. It might be Honduras, but I think it's El Salvador. preys on the Hispanic communities, and they're huge on Long Island, and it's young people. It's they're 18, 19, 20, 21, and again, they'll lure somebody to a park and they'll hack them to death with a machete and leave them there.
Yeah.
They use women, young girls, as lures to lure somebody into a place where they can murder them, and it's and they do extortion and
evil is evil.
Exactly. And don't forget, you had a whole Jewish mob. Like I said, Murder Incorporated was started by two Jewish guys.
Yeah.
So it's in Harlem you have the black mobs. You have it's everywhere, and it's all intramural.
I had Lucas in there to talk a little bit about where he was at with the heroin and how he kind of took over Harlem. But I agree with you. I agree evil is evil and good is good, and I believe 99.9% of people are good.
I hold to that. I hope we are correct.
Yeah, and I truly hope we are correct too. So when you were growing up, all right, what year did you graduate high school?
1976, bicentennial.
76.
It's great. Yeah.
So
a lot of red, white, and blue.
Godfather came out in 72.
Right.
There were other mobsters, you dirty rat, and mobster stuff before Godfather, but I don't remember mobster movies or gang movies until The Godfather. So what predates Godfather to you? I mean, that to me is is the pinnacle of mobster movies and
you had those Edward G. Robinson movies. Top of the world, Ma, top of the world, where he smashes the grapefruit into his girlfriend's or his wife's face, and on the waterfront. Yeah, there were a lot of movies in the 50s and the 40s that were sort of mob-esque movies, and they were alluding to it. Like I said, Edward G. Robinson was a big bad guy for a while. But I'm laughing because I saw
I'm wearing a gangster hat. I didn't even think about this. I just looked at myself on the camera. I was like, well, I'm wearing a little bit of a gangster hat today.
Well, if you're Peaky Blinders, yeah.
Well, Peaky Blinders had the paper boy with the razor blade.
Oh, yeah.
So,
yeah. But I'm laughing because I saw The Godfather with my mother and my father and my Aunt B, my father's sister, at the Valley Stream Drive-In, and I'm watching The Godfather in a drive-in theater with my family.
Okay.
And it was 72, so I was 14-ish.
Mm-hmm. So. And like
there was a couple of awkward scenes in there where Sonny's banging Kay against the door.
Yeah, and and like I said, I didn't see Godfather until much later. I didn't see Godfather probably till I was in middle school.
Yeah.
And I think we had just got like HBO or something like that, and HBO might have been the only premium movie out there, what we call streaming now.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't see it until I was probably middle school, high school, in early '80s.
Did you read the book?
I believe it or not, I only read the fourth one.
Oh, okay.
So
Mario Puzo, man.
Puzo. So I only read the fourth one. I did not read and the third movie sucked. And they never made. I don't know if they ever made the fourth one. I didn't read The Godfather because I already saw that one. I didn't read Godfather 2 because I already saw that one.
That's tasty.
Yeah, it's so good.
Yeah.
But I can tell you, that's kind of my barometer of gangster movies and things like that. Donnie Brasco.
Yeah.
Is
I don't know if I've ever even seen the movie, but now I want to go see it because now I know who Donnie Brasco was.
You haven't seen the movie?
No.
Oh, I thought you brought it up because you saw the movie.
No, I you know what? We're watching History Channel had this great series, and it's interesting because I have 4 things to watch that I haven't yet. But they did 3 nights of 2 hours a night on the 5 families. Mm-hmm. And it started in the 20s when the 2 guys got together from Sicily and said, oh, we can run the world. So that was pretty great. And it went from there up to Gotti dying in jail. Mm-hmm. And it was news footage. It was fabulous. It was news footage. You're looking at reporters that I grew up with, John Johnson and who's the guy who's the crime reporter now, who was the vice mayor of New York, who's a terrorism. The guy started out as a street reporter and did the mob stuff in New York City. Mm-hmm. It'll come to me, but he was like he's like the counterterrorism expert in the world and in Washington and everywhere.
How much do you think the mob played into politics in the mid 20th century? Because there was always a connection with JFK.
Yeah, but that was...
And how that worked. And, with Sinatra somewhat floated between JFK and the mob type situation. And then Bobby K goes after the mob.
Yeah.
So, I mean...
I think it was more economic.
When I think mob and politics, I go to the Kennedy family.
Yeah.
Do you think that's...
Well, it started with his father.
I was going to say, does it start with Jack?
Oh, with... No, Jack wasn't. Jack was
his older brother.
Right. It was... I thought it was Joe Kennedy. Joe Kennedy was the ambassador to England.
Yeah.
Who was, by the way, made more money in bootlegging than Al frickin' Capone. Mm-hmm. Believe me when I tell you, this guy was not a nice man. I think it was more of an economic relationship than necessarily a political relationship. I think the political relationship was there for economic benefit between politicians and the mob per se, in my opinion, and it was tough because Bobby Kennedy, as the Attorney General, was going after the mob.
Yeah,
and it was a dicey road to rake.
Blake asked me, did I think that Bobby Kennedy would be a good president?
Mm-hmm.
I think Bobby Kennedy would have won.
Yeah.
But I don't know if Bobby Kennedy would have been a good president at that time. I think Bobby
Late
Kennedy
60s?
was a non-compromising human being. He was very stout.
Have you met his son?
And stout what he believed in.
Yeah.
His son's a little more progressive,
out there?
progressive in thinking.
Out there?
We're trying to be complimentary.
Okay.
Out there.
Out there's
Okay.
there's non-judgmental.
I think he's a free thinker.
Yeah.
A little bit too free.
What was the name of this? The movie that DiCaprio, Damon, Martin Sheen, Wahlberg, and
was that? I want to say the Unforgiven, but that wasn't it. It was the Boston Mob movie.
Blake, you remember the name of that movie?
I do not remember that movie.
Well, the ending of that movie. Whew.
Yeah. Well, that's the whole thing. I mean, you had the whole Boston mob and the Irish mob too.
Yeah.
You had the Hell's Kitchen people. Then you had up in Boston, you had Whitey Bulger and the whole Irish mob. Mm.
Yeah,
but
I mean, go ahead, Blake.
But we'll say that, so here in St. Augustine, we really didn't have like an actual mob type here. We had organized crime in the past. We still have organized crime going on right now, but have we ever had like an official mob family been in town?
Well, it's hard to say, and I can tell you this. I mean, a lot of the tactics that was used by big business, that actually very stout religious religious people, non-drinkers like Rockefeller and Flagler and some of them, they used a lot of the same strategies. Mm-hmm. To make the mob organization work. So they took some of the strategies of the true moguls of the world and instituted them into the mob to create the success of loyalty and some of the hierarchies that worked. Oh, and Robin came up with the Departed. Thank you, Robin. That was excellent. But so in a way, like what Henry Flagler did to what is now the Casa Monica, I believe it was called the Cordova. I think it was Frank Smith. Am I correct on that name?
Franklin Smith, who built the Villa Zareta, who taught Henry Flagler how to use coquina in concrete.
Yeah, and then he built the Cordova, and then
put him out of business.
I think he spent over $1.5 million, and Flagler bought it from him for $325. So what Flagler did to him, Blake, to put him out of business is the deliveries that came in on the railroad, which was controlled by Flagler. He didn't get his deliveries on time for his guests. Right. And all of a sudden they were stalled, and it was a tactic, very mob-like tactic that was used. And, it was probably legal, but it was very mob-like.
Well, it wasn't ethical.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't ethical.
Wasn't ethical. That's what. Look, I've been saying for years, and people look at me cross-eyed. I think that Henry Flagler was, from a business sense, a very good businessman, but he was not a nice person. And people say, oh, he was very philanthropic, he was very charitable. You know what? Bullshit. The guy would strong-arm the shit out of you, put you out of business. If the bells were ringing in your church, he'd buy your church and then give you a steeple without a bell in it. He was very protective of himself. The guy was as wealthy as you could be at the time.
Yeah.
He was one of the richest men in the country by far because of Standard Oil.
Yeah.
Because some guy stuck a pipe in Titusville, Pennsylvania, down 65 feet and found freaking oil in 1859.
Colonel...
Dawes.
Wait, no, one dog.
Drake?
Colonel Drake. Colonel Drake.
But I got
Henry Flagler, Henry Flagler, and people don't understand this, his connection with Rockefeller. Rockefeller didn't have that much money. Henry Flagler didn't have that much money. Henry Flagler's first wife's dad had the money. So Henry Flagler got 25% of Standard Oil. People don't realize what a big partner he was in Standard Oil. Henry Flagler's father-in-law had 25% of Standard Oil. John D. Rockefeller had 50%. So people, everyone thinks Rockefeller, Standard Oil, they just think of him,
right,
and he owned it outright. The other two families could have overpowered Rockefeller in a lot of different ways. Rockefeller and Flagler were best friends until Flagler's third wife. Flagler didn't start drinking until the age of 62. Rockefeller was kind of a teetotaler,
right,
and so was Flagler. They walked to work together every day in Cleveland and home together every day in Cleveland when they were building Standard Oil. Flagler's the one who created the monopoly of Standard Oil.
And the transportation aspect of it,
100%.
Yeah.
He regulated the transportation. Flagler was a shrewd businessman. And you can say what you want, and these guys did it. They did it under the guise of the Bible,
right? Well,
but they controlled a lot of business, saying they're doing great things.
Well, they did vertical integration. Instead of going horizontal, they started oil, and then the transportation of oil, and then the gas stations and everything. So they took it in every direction. But I'm going to loop us back here for a second.
Right. We're already over 2 minutes, so go ahead.
Okay. Well, here's the deal. Just to let you know that the mob still exists, and the mafia in Italy in particular. There's a woman by the name, or I believe it's a woman, but there's a person by the name of Tiziana Ronzio, who is in Rome, and in front of her house a couple days ago, an empty black coffin was left in front of this person's house. They're an anti-mafia crusader, and a black coffin was left at their doorstep, and the legend is it goes to the Casamonica family. So there's a mob family in Italy called the Casamonica. One word, Casamonica family, allegedly left a black coffin as an intimidation technique in front of this anti-mob activist, their anti-mafia activist's house in Italy, in Rome.
Yep. All right, guys, it's time for us to go. I want to say thank you. I appreciate everybody's comments that are out there. If you guys would, please hit that share button. We're on YouTube. Blake makes sure we're up and running on that all the time. Great information. Lenny, you had insight from New York that I never had.
Oh yeah, this was all local to me.
There wasn't a lot of mob and clan.
No,
there was a different type of clan.
Right. Oh yeah.
Well, I mean, and we might have to do some secret societies next week.
I think that's a great
guys,
idea.
If you would hit us with some messages, either me or Lenny or Blake, of ideas that you want us to talk about and do a little bit more research on, because we love doing these deep dives.
It's so much fun.
This is Bollox Talks and Tangents. We'll see you next week.